Welcome back to Coin Nexa Vault. Before we dive in, I need you to understand something. The Washington quarters we're covering today are not the kind of coins most people think twice about, but the collectors who know what to look for treat these like buried treasure hiding in plain sight, and every single coin on this list has a legitimate reason to stop you cold the moment you spot one. We are building towards something today, coin by coin, and I'm telling you right now with complete confidence that the final quarter on this list is the one that will genuinely make you want to tear apart every coin jar in your house. So stay locked in from the very first second, because this is not a list where you can afford to skip ahead. Let's get into it. The 1997p Washington quarter is one of those coins that almost everybody passes over because 1997 feels recent, feels ordinary, feels like it couldn't possibly matter, and that assumption is exactly what makes the people who know better very, very happy. Here's the thing about the 1997p that most casual collectors completely miss. The Philadelphia Mint struck these quarters during a period of unusually high production volume, and when a mint is pushing enormous numbers under deadline pressure, quality control gaps appear. And those gaps created a small but documented population of 1997p quarters with strike doubling and hub doubling anomalies that transform a common coin into something worth serious attention. What you want to do right now, if you have a 1997p quarter in front of you, is flip it to the obverse and look specifically at the word Liberty, particularly at the letters LIB. On a normal coin, those letters are clean, single impression, sharp-edged. On a double die example, you'll see a faint but unmistakable second shelf of the letters sitting just slightly offset to the south, visible without magnification if you tilt the coin under a direct light source at a low angle. You're also going to check the date. Look at the 9 and the 7 in 1997 for any secondary impression bleeding off the base of the numbers, because that's where the doubling tends to be most pronounced on the confirmed examples. Now, in terms of value, a standard 1997p quarter in circulated condition is still just a quarter. But a certified MS67 example of the 1997p in a PCGS or NGC holder has sold in the range of several $100s, and a documented double die variety in high mint state grades pushes into the low thousands. The key word there is certified. Without third-party authentication from PCGS or NGC, the premium simply doesn't transfer at sale. The 1997p was produced at Philadelphia, which carries no mint mark on quarters from this era. That blank space above the date where a mint mark would be is itself the identifier, so if you see no letter, you are looking at a Philadelphia coin. Philadelphia was running at peak capacity in the late 1990s, producing hundreds of millions of quarters annually, which sounds like it would make these common, and most of them are. But the sheer volume of production is also precisely why error coins slipped through at a higher rate than in lower volume years, because inspection couldn't keep pace with output. The 1997p is not a coin that will fund a retirement on its own, but it is a coin that rewards careful attention, and finding a gem-grade example with any degree of doubling is the kind of quiet discovery that reminds you why checking your change actually matters. As always, condition is everything, grade determines value, and third-party certification is what makes that value real and transferable when you go to sell. But here is where I need you to stay focused, because the next quarter on this list comes from a year that carries significantly more production history, significantly more documented varieties, and a collector demand that makes the 1997p look like a warm-up exercise. Do not go anywhere. Next, 1990p Washington quarter. If the 1997p was a coin that rewards attention, the 1990p is a coin that punishes anyone who doesn't pay it. The 1990p Washington quarter sits at the intersection of two forces that coin collectors find almost irresistible. It comes from a year of documented mint anomalies, and it comes from an era just before modern quality control improvements made certain types of errors virtually impossible to find. What makes 1990 so interesting from a production standpoint is that Philadelphia was in a transitional period with its dye preparation process, and that transition created an environment where repunched mint marks, dye cap errors, and most importantly double dye varieties appeared at a rate that collectors have been quietly exploiting for decades. The specific thing you are looking for on a 1990 P quarter is on the reverse. Flip your coin over and look at the eagle's breast feathers, specifically the cluster of feathers just above the shield on the eagle's left side. On a standard 1990p, those feathers are sharp and singular. On the most sought-after variety, there is a visible doubling of the feather detail, a ghosting effect where the secondary impression creates what almost looks like a second layer of feathers sitting slightly behind the primary image. It's subtle enough that someone glancing at the coin would miss it entirely, but under a 5x loop held at the right angle under a lamp, it is absolutely unmistakable once you know what you're seeing. Also check the lettering in United States of America on the reverse. Specifically look at the U in United and the first S in States, because those two letters tend to show the doubling most dramatically on confirmed examples, making them the fastest visual check for an untrained eye. A standard circulated 1990p quarter is face value, full stop. But an MS-67 certified example of the 1990p has appeared at auction in the $400 to $800 range, and a confirmed double dye variety in comparable condition breaks significantly above that threshold, with the most pristine documented examples drawing serious competitive bidding from registry set collectors who are specifically trying to fill the 1990 slot in their complete Washington quarter collections. Registry competition alone drives premiums on coins like this far beyond what the raw rarity numbers would suggest, because these collectors are not buying a coin, they're buying a ranking position in a nationally tracked set, and that makes them willing to pay. Philadelphia in 1990 was producing quarters at a volume that would seem staggering by modern standards, and the workforce and equipment were being pushed hard in a pre-automation era where human hands were still central to quality inspection. That's the context that explains why gem condition 1990p quarters are more elusive than you'd expect from a coin produced in the millions. Remember, grading and certification are what convert a coin's potential into actual realized value. A raw coin with suspected doubling is an interesting find. A slabbed and certified example with the variety attributed is a genuinely sellable asset. The 1990p rewards patience and a good loop, but what's coming next on this list requires neither patience nor a loop. It requires knowing one very specific thing about a coin that almost everyone already has, and when you hear what it is, you'll understand why collectors circle this particular year on their most wanted lists. Keep watching. Next, 1986p Washington Quarter. The 1986p Washington Quarter doesn't get talked about loudly in casual collector circles, and that silence is not because it's unimportant. It's because the people who know what makes this coin remarkable tend to prefer keeping quiet about it while they quietly build their holdings. Here is the straight, confident truth about the 1986p. This coin comes from a year when Philadelphia was dealing with a documented issue in its die hubbing process, specifically involving the Washington portrait on the obverse, and the result was a subset of 1986p quarters where the detail on Washington's hair above his ear, specifically the tight curl pattern just behind and above the left ear as you're looking at the coin's obverse, shows a pronounced secondary impression that is not dye. Polish, not wear, and not a fluke of lighting. It is a genuine hub doubling anomaly, and it has been confirmed and attributed by major third-party graders. So right now, if you have a 1986p quarter, remember, no mint mark above the date means Philadelphia. Turn it to the obverse under a strong directional light and look at that hair curl cluster above Washington's left ear. You want to look for a second, slightly offset impression of the curl lines sitting just inside or just behind the primary image. It looks, when you first see it, almost like the coin is slightly blurry in that one spot. But the rest of the coin is sharp and clean, and that localized doubling is exactly what you're looking for. The doubling doesn't show up in every 1986p, not even close. It appears in a small population of coins from a specific die marriage, which means the vast majority of 1986p quarters you encounter will be standard circulation coins worth exactly 25 cents. But the ones that carry the variety, in MS66 or MS67 condition, certified by PCGS or NGC with the double die attribution, examples have moved at auction in the range of several hundred to over $1,000, and top condition examples with exceptional eye appeal can surpass that. For a coin that started its life as ordinary pocket change, that kind of premium is the entire reason this hobby exists. The 1986p also benefits from a lower survival rate in high grades than the raw mintage numbers suggest, because 1986 was a year of heavy circulation. These quarters were spent aggressively in commerce, and coins that stayed pristine through the 1980s and 1990s without accumulating contact marks or bag marks were always a small fraction of what was originally produced. That attrition over nearly 4 decades means that a genuinely gem condition 1986p is rarer in the marketplace than it should theoretically be, and collector demand in the Washington Quarter series remains strong enough that the premium is real and sustainable. Certification is non-negotiable. Variety attribution from a recognized third-party service is what makes the difference between a coin a dealer will pay real money for and a coin they'll politely decline. Now I want you to stay with me because the next quarter on this list takes us back one more decade and into a year where the story gets significantly more layered, more varieties, more documented auction history, and a level of collector obsession that makes the 1986p look understated by comparison. The 1979 Washington Quarter is next, and it has a story that you genuinely need to hear. Next, 1979 Washington Quarter. The 1979 Washington Quarter is the first coin on this list that makes serious, experienced collectors visibly sit up straighter when it comes up in conversation, and the reason comes down to one specific detail that divides this coin into two completely different collecting universes. In 1979, the Philadelphia Mint produced Washington Quarters with a mint mark, specifically the P mark that Philadelphia began adding to coins in this era, and here is where it gets critically important. There are two distinct varieties of the 1979 P Washington Quarter, known as the Type 1 and Type 2, and the difference between them is visible to the naked eye if you know exactly where to look, and that difference is worth real money to the right buyer. What you are looking for is the mint mark itself, the P above the date on the obverse. On the Type 1 variety, the P appears filled, almost blobby, like the interior of the letter didn't strike cleanly and the counters of the P are partially or fully closed. On the Type 2, the P is sharp, clear, and well-defined, with the opening of the letter visibly open and distinct. Take your 1979 P quarter right now and look at that P with a loop, not just a casual glance, but a real examination, because what variety you have determines whether you're holding a coin worth face value or something that generates serious collector interest. The Type 2 variety is significantly scarcer, and in high mint state grades, a certified Type 2 example has sold in the hundreds of dollars range with strong auction competition, particularly from collectors building complete date and variety Washington Quarter sets who specifically need the Type 2 to complete their registry. The Type 1 in gem condition still carries a premium above face value in high grades, but it's the Type 2 that collectors are genuinely hunting for with urgency. Beyond the variety story, 1979 was a genuinely interesting production year for the U.S. Mint. It was a period of economic pressure in America. Inflation was running high, coin demand was intense, and the mint was pushing output at a pace that left its own fingerprints on the coins being produced. Die wear, striking consistencies, and the transitional mint mark practices of this era all combined to make 1979 one of the more layered years in the Washington Quarter series, with multiple varieties documented across both Philadelphia and Denver production. The condition disclaimer still applies and always will. A worn, circulated 1979 P quarter of either type is not going to generate collector excitement. But a coin that has been protected from the start, that graded MS67 or above at PCGS or NGC, with the Type 2 variety clearly attributed, is the kind of coin that shows up in auction house catalogs with a pre-sale estimate that makes casual observers do a double take. Know your variety, get it certified if the grade is there, and understand that this one detail, the shape of a single letter on a coin produced nearly 50 years ago, is the difference between spending it and selling it. Now, I said at the beginning of this video that every coin on this list builds towards something, and I meant it completely, because what's coming next is the quarter that sits at the very top of this particular list, the one with the deepest history, the most layered variety story, and the kind of collector significance that makes the 1979 feel like the opening act of the main event. The 1967 Washington Quarter is the coin we've been building toward, and it earns every word of the buildup. Next, 1967 Washington Quarter. The 1967 Washington Quarter is not just the most significant coin on this list. It is one of the most historically important Washington quarters ever produced, full stop, and the reason goes back to a genuine crisis in American commerce that most people today have completely forgotten about. In the mid-1960s, the United States was experiencing a catastrophic coin shortage. Americans were hoarding silver coins as the government prepared to transition away from silver coinage, and the shortage was so severe that vending machines, parking meters, and cash registers across the country were grinding to a halt for lack of circulating coins. Congress passed the Coinage Act of 1965 in direct response, stripping silver from dimes and quarters entirely, and the 1967 Washington Quarter is a product of that emergency era. Struck in the new copper-nickel-clad composition, carrying no mint mark at all as a deliberate government policy to prevent collectors from hoarding coins by mint of origin, and produced in enormous volume to flood the market and end the shortage. That no mint mark status is not an error, it was intentional, it was mandated, and it is the first thing you should verify when you pick up what looks like a 1967 quarter. There should be absolutely no letter above the date on the obverse. If you see one, you have a different coin entirely. On a genuine 1967 Washington quarter, look instead at the obverse portrait, specifically at the lettering in I in God We Trust on the left side of Washington's portrait. A small but documented population of 1,967 quarters exists with a genuine double die on this motto, most dramatically visible on the letters God, where a secondary impression sits just slightly above and to the right of the primary lettering. Under a loop, this looks like the words have been typed twice with the second impression barely offset, and that detail on a coin from this particular year with this particular history is what sends certified examples into serious collector territory. The value on a standard, circulated 1967 Washington quarter is still just a quarter, no premium, no collector excitement, spend it freely. But the story changes dramatically with condition and variety. A gem MS67 example of the 1967 Washington quarter, certified by PCGS or NGC, has sold in the range of several hundred to well over $1,000, because the special mint set coins of this era were produced with higher care than standard circulation strikes, and the finest surviving examples are genuinely scarce after nearly 60 years of attrition. A documented double die example in gem condition is rarer still, with confirmed auction results that reflect both the variety premium and the historical significance of the coin's era. The 1967 quarter also matters because it represents a genuine turning point in American monetary history, the last gasp of the old coinage era and the first breath of the modern clad system that persists to this day, which gives it a cross-market appeal that goes beyond pure numismatics into American economic history, a factor that sustains and even grows collector demand over time rather than diminishing it. Check the lettering, check the date for any secondary impressions, verify the no mint mark status, and if the coin grades high on your own assessment, get it to a certified grader immediately, because the difference between knowing you have a gem grade 1967 Washington quarter and being able to prove it with a PCGS or NGC certification is the entire difference between a coin worth 25 cents and a coin worth a meaningful multiple of that. The 1967 is the coin this whole video was building toward, and it absolutely earned its place at the top of the list. If you've got a coin like any of these sitting at home, drop a comment and let me know. And if you enjoyed this, hit subscribe so you never miss the next one.